Good morning, counsel, parties, members of the jury. As you know, we are still in plaintiff's case in chief, and so we're ready to start off this morning with a new witness, Mr. Feiger.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I call Mr. Freshour to the stand.
I wonder if I should go here.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Where is this witness?
They're bringing him. I guess they have to go through some things to get him. He's not standing out in the hall.
I'm sorry for the delay here. I gathered that Mr. Freshour is in custody, and so he has to go through some security clearances before he can be brought in.
Thank you, Ron.
Your Honor, maybe we can approach and take up another matter
Sure.
so as not to delay the next witness.
Sir, would you raise your right hand so that you can be sworn?
You solemnly swear that the testimony which you are about to give in the case now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Please be seated. State your name and spell it for the court reporter.
Brian Freshour. Brian Freshour. Brian Freshhour.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Freshour.
Good morning.
My name is Jeffrey Feiger, and I represent the plaintiff in this case. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And would you tell the court and jury your name, please?
Brian Freshour.
And Mr. Freshour, you and I have never met before, have we?
No.
And you and I have never spoken before. Am I correct?
Yes.
I understand that you have information relating to Mr. Bruner, and we'd like to talk about that today with you. Okay?
Okay.
We're going to go back to March of 2008. Were you housed at the Staton County Jail at that time?
Yes, sir.
And how long had you been at the Staton County Jail in March of 2008?
I was doing a commitment on 90 days for driving on suspended.
Driving while suspended license. And did you have occasion during your time at Staton County Jail to come in contact with Terry Bruner?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us how you came in contact with him?
When I first got there, he was on a top bunk, and they put me
Could
on.
you speak a little closer to the mic? It'll amplify you pretty well.
When I got there, he was on the top bunk, and I was placed on the bunk next to his, beside him.
So you were actually in the same room with him?
Yeah, they house all the Sedgwick County inmates that get farmed out in one area.
The evidence in this case shows that he was there from early November until being transferred out on the 6th, I believe, of March of 2008. Were you with him that whole time?
No, I was probably with him for about, I'm going to say anywhere from 8 to 15 days, roughly.
Were you with him at the time immediately when the time when he was transferred out? Were you, those 15 days include the time he was transferred back to Sedgwick?
Yeah, it would have been the last 15 days. It was
Oh,
8 to 15 days, I think it was, about 2 weeks.
okay. Now, I'd like to ask you, what we're interested in here is simply what you observed in terms of his physical condition, his well-being, during that time immediately before he was sent back to Sedgwick. Could you describe what you observed?
There was a lot of coughing throughout the whole night. I never once seen him actually eat anything. I seen him drink a couple cups of water a few times. We had to actually help him off of his bunk to take him to the bathroom. A few times we had to have the people come in, bring new linen because he defecated on himself.
I'm sorry, he did what?
Defecated. I
Okay.
guess that'd be the word to use.
Yes, of course.
Blood was in his bowel movements. We had to actually help him wipe. I mean, it was actually pretty disgusting what we had to do, but you know, you can't just let a guy suffer like that. If he needs help, you're going to help him no matter what he's done.
Did he appear to be suffering?
Oh, yeah.
Did he appear to be sick to you?
Yes.
Was it obvious to you that he was sick?
The second day I was there, I didn't know what he had. I was scared that he might have had tuberculosis because of all the coughing. So that was the first thing I asked. You know, something needs to be done with this man. And, you know, just because of all the coughing he was doing and puking and everything else, no one knew what was wrong with him. And it didn't seem like anybody really cared what was wrong with him.
Did there come a time when finally, did that ever stop until he was, did he ever get better before he was transferred?
No, he never come off of his bunk, other than if we helped him to go to the bathroom.
And do you remember the day he was transferred or the day before he was transferred?
I know we had to help him, and we moved all the stuff and cleaned everything up when he left. But I mean, I can't say if I remember all of it. None of that was...
Okay. What did you do when you helped him be transferred? What did you have to do to help him leave Staton County, you yourself?
Well, he was on the top bunk. We helped him get down. I told him I'd take care of cleaning the stuff up behind, you know, the soiled sheets and stuff like that, wipe everything down. Because usually when they bring one person, when they take somebody out, they'll bring somebody else in.
Okay. How did you help him out of the bunk?
Just me and another guy would grab his arms, because you have to jump off the bunks. And there's no way he
could he
do that.
walk?
No, I mean, when he got down, we helped him. He was weak.
Okay, but could he walk under his own power or with you on?
No.
How was it? How did you help him?
Arm over the shoulder, help him to the bathroom, stand there while he peed, or stand there while he defecated. You know, what I mean, it was just, there was no way that he could really do anything.
Okay, and did you clean up? You said after he left.
Yes, sir.
And what did you see there?
Stains on the sheets, bloods on the pillow, blood on the sheets, urine on the sheets. I don't know what they did with his undergarments. I didn't have to clean none of that stuff up. But
Okay. Did you ever have any contact with him after he left Staton?
no, I stayed there and finished my time out.
Okay. Did there come a time when you learned he had died at Sedgwick?
Yeah, I heard about it while I was in Stanton.
How did you hear about it?
People coming from Sedgwick County in Stanton.
Okay. Did you, how did you let anyone know that you had information involving this case?
I'm not understanding what you mean.
How did, at some point, someone discovered that you had information? Did you write a letter, or did you contact, or did somebody contact you?
They came and talked to me.
Okay. And you told them what you've told us here? And is that all the information that you have, Mr. Freshour?
Other than I don't understand, you know, the purpose of why people get shipped out to other counties when you get.
Okay, I understand. That's really not an issue that we're talking about here, but do you have any more information about what Mr. Bruner's physical condition?
Other than I wouldn't have wanted to been in that position, by no means.
Was he obviously sick to you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Freshour, my name is Art Chalmers. I represent these two deputies. I've never met you either, I don't think. Is that right?
No.
No. You indicate you've not met Mr. Feiger, but you have talked with attorneys associated with representing the Bruner family, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't think it was an attorney, no.
You talked to an investigator that came out and said that they were investigating the matter for the Bruner family, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And you provided an affidavit for them, didn't you?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. And in the affidavit, you set out what it is that you remembered and what it is that presumably you expected to testify to today when finally the case went to trial, right?
No one said I'd be testifying. Nobody said I'd be testifying.
But in any event, in your affidavit, you were trying to be as complete as you could in responding to the questions that the investigators asked you who were wanting you to provide the affidavit, weren't you?
I told them what I seen, yeah.
Yeah, let me be just real direct. You didn't lie to the investigators, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't hold back information, did you?
No, sir.
Now, you are presently incarcerated on a felony conviction for burglary, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I don't want to know anything about your criminal histories more than 10 years ago, but I do want to know about your convictions in the last 10 years involving felonies. I'm not talking about misdemeanors or things like that. Can you list those for me?
I don't really know them right off.
No, let's see if I
sure
can
you
help
have.
you remember. Let's see, in July of 2010,
Can we just could I have a moment, Your Honor, before the next question? Just. Could we approach the bench?
Apologize, Mr. Freshour. We were visiting about your convictions. maybe the best way to start is to talk about you are presently incarcerated now and serving time under what convictions?
Burglary and evade and elude. Evade and elude.
Yeah. There was a conviction for burglary of a building not used as a dwelling, and that involved an event on November 28, 2009. There were other burglary convictions. Actually, there were 4 separate counts of burglary that arose out of events on November 28, 2009. You remember that, don't you?
Yeah.
And you were convicted of those on May 2010. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then there was the fleeing and the elude that you just mentioned, and that was actually an event that took place on December 8, 2010. That was roughly 6 months after you were convicted on the burglary convictions, and that led to a felony conviction, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then there was those are the burglaries that I found. Are there the convictions that I found in that time frame? Is there anything else that, as we've talked about it, you remember?
I'm not understanding what this has to do with Terry Bruner's death.
Well, sir, you have on the past engaged in dishonest activity. You've broken into homes, you've broken into buildings to steal other people's goods. Isn't that right?
That's what I've done, sir.
Now, let's talk about Terry Bruner then for just a moment, but I want to visit first about and get your testimony straight. My notes aren't the best, but I heard you testify just a few minutes ago that you, by your recollection, were in the jail with Terry Bruner out in Staton County for approximately 2 weeks.
Give or take, I'm not for sure the dates.
No, we're not talking about just a day, are we? We're talking about an extended period of time. That's your testimony, isn't it?
Yeah, it was 4 years ago.
I understand. Was it a day?
It was more than that.
Was it 2 days?
It was probably roughly in between 2 weeks.
All right, roughly 2 weeks. I'm not going to hold you to 13 days or 15 days, but you have a clear memory of being with Mr. Bruner for a 2-week period of time, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's what you're testifying here to this morning?
Like I said, it was 4 years ago. I'm not for sure the dates.
Okay, and you're testifying here this morning that Mr. Bruner was, during that whole time period, was coughing, needed help getting off his bunk, was messing his linen, was literally laying in his own waste material, needed help going to the bathroom, and needed help being cleaned up after he went to the bathroom. That's your testimony, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
In your affidavit, sir, and I've got a copy of it, I can show it to you if it's helpful, but your testimony in the affidavit is that Mr. Bruner was very thin and frail with a sunken face, his hair was matted and falling out, and you witnessed Bruner getting out of bed only to go to the bathroom. But you don't say anything about coughing, help getting off the bunk, defecating himself, and doing that for a period of, well, maybe 2 weeks. Why is that?
It's pretty obvious when a guy's sick.
But when you were asked to prepare this affidavit...
Excuse me, objection. This isn't in evidence, but Mr. Chalmers is wrong. Paragraph 9 says, 9 and 10 say what he says it doesn't say. It's unfair to not allow him.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, counsel. And
It actually says what he said it
and I'll
doesn't
correct
say.
that. Because I want to make sure I've got a complete list of what it is that you're saying. Because on paragraph 9, I think it indicates that you said that Terry Bruner had not eaten for days, and that you complained to Staton County jailers about it. Is that right?
Everybody did.
Yeah. So you were telling the Staton County jailers, here's a guy that I've seen, and he's not eaten for days. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's your testimony.
Yes, sir.
And they responded to you. You say, it's not up to us, it's up to Sedgwick County. That's what they told you, right?
Yes, sir.
And you said in paragraph 10, and thank you, counsel, for correcting this, that Mr. Bruner suffered from a distinct hacking cough and sounded like he was always coughing up vomit. That's one of the things you said as well, right?
That's what's in the affidavit. Yeah, he coughed all.
And that was happening the whole 2 weeks you say you were there. And that was heard by you and by the Staton County jailers that were there.
When they came back, it was obvious the man was sick.
No, you said it was obvious that he was clearly sick, that he was sick to the degree that you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you remember the jailer out there, Mr. Nickel, don't you?
I mean, face probably, not
All
by
right.
name.
And you, in your affidavit, stated that fellow inmates made an effort to help Terry eat something, offered him food and water, but he'd only try to eat crackers and drink water, and that was all. That was also something you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you remember?
Yes, sir.
And you also said, and that in particular, you remember one event, and that is at a Thursday evening at 8 p.m., that Terry Bruner was unable to stand in line to get his indigent packs. Do you remember saying that?
I don't know exactly if it was the day was right, but I remember they gave indigent packs out on Thursday, yeah.
Yeah. When you were there, the whole period of time, it was Thursday when they gave out the indigent packs, right?
Well, you could get indigent stuff anytime you needed it, but when the new guys came, it was more likely on a Thursday.
Okay. So your statement was, when you prepared this, that the inmates were required to stand in line on Thursday evening at 8 p.m., and that because Terry Bruner was unable to stand in line, he had to take showers, or he had no shower items, had to sleep in the same sheets and bedding, and wear soiled clothing. And that required other inmates, and when other inmates asked to take items to Mr. Bruner, they were told by the Staton County guards that they couldn't do that. That was your testimony, right?
Some of the times, yeah.
Is that what you're still saying today?
I would still say that today, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you, I think, volunteered to the jury that you were in jail on this particular occasion on a, what was it, a DUI? Or what did you say that you...
I'm pretty sure it was a driving on suspended, that's why I went to...
Okay. And so you were actually in Sedgwick County after having been arrested for driving while suspended, and then were transferred out to Stanton County.
Yes, sir.
And then you stayed in Stanton County for a period of time and then returned back to Wichita, right?
Yes, sir.
And to get out to Stanton County, you were put in a van and you were driven out there, right?
Yes, sir.
And the records reflect that it was on March 4, 2008, at about 5:30 in the morning that you were placed in the van to be taken out to Stanton County. Does that refresh your recollection that it was March 4 that you were sent out there?
Not right off, no.
Right.
I've
You
been to
don't
so many-
dispute records that show that you were taken out there on March 4, do you?
No, but I've been to so many facilities, it's, like I said, I don't know the dates. I've been to so many facilities, I don't remember all the dates he's trying to give me.
And, sir, you got to Stanton County then on March 4 of 2008, and you arrived at approximately 11 o'clock in the morning. Do you remember that?
It probably was, yeah.
And your first observation then of Terry Bruner would have been on March 4, 2008.
Yeah.
And you were there on March 5, and there's been some testimony about the events of March 5, but during the events of March 5, you made some observations about Terry Bruner, I guess you're saying, right?
I'm not sure what, like I said, I don't know the dates.
And then Terry Bruner left early in the morning, or excuse me, he left in the afternoon of March 6. So, sir, you in fact had a little less than one full day with Terry Bruner.
I don't believe that's right.
That's what the records show, sir. And if the records show that, then your testimony that you had a couple weeks, well, give or take a day, of observation certainly should be called in question, shouldn't it?
I know what I've seen, and I don't think any man should have been treated and been in the position that he would have been in to begin with.
Okay. And so you decided to bend the truth a little bit to try to help him out.
I'm not bending nothing.
And you wouldn't do that because you're an honest guy.
I'm not going to say that I'm an honest guy. I'm going to say that what I seen was true.
I don't have any other questions.
Redirect.
Just a couple more questions, Mr. Freshour. Mr. Chalmers claims he has a record that says you were only with Terry Bruner for 3 days, not a couple weeks. Could it have been 3 days, or could that record be wrong?
I don't really know. I mean, what I seen, I don't understand what the dates and the times and the places and this and that. When I seen the man, that's what everybody should be worried about, was the position that man was in, not about how many days I was there or this or that. It almost disgusts me to see that people are trying to fight against a man who was done wrong.
Were you in the same bunk with Terry Bruner?
Yes, sir.
And did you see him?
Yes, sir.
And do you have anything to gain by coming here and telling us?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any recross?
Your heritage is as a Native American Indian, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And have you participated in any of the Native American Indian activities in Wichita?
Yes, sir.
And you know the Bruner family through that, is that correct?
The Bruner family's Native American, yes, sir.
And you served time with some of the Bruner family, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
I don't have anything else.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Chalmers?
I know, Your Honor.
Thank you. Sir, you're excused. Plaintiff's next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Call Mr. Navarrete, please, to the stand. Paul Navarrete.
And is he also in custody?
Yes, he's being brought.
So, members of the jury, if you want to stand and stretch for a minute while we get ready to bring him in, feel free to do that.
They're on the way.
Sir, will you step into the witness box, please, here, and raise your right hand so that you can be sworn?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony which you are about to give in the case now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Please be seated, state your name, and spell it for the court report.
Paul Neverett. Navarrette.
Good morning, Mr. Navarrette.
Morning.
My name is Jeffrey Feiger. I represent the plaintiff in this case. Would you tell the court and jury, please, your name again?
Paul Neverett.
And Mr. Navarrette, have you and I ever met?
No.
And have we ever spoken together?
No.
And excuse me for asking this, but I just want to clear something up. Are you an American Indian?
No.
And are you in some way conspiring with the Bruner family to provide false testimony?
No.
Were you in the... Did you know a gentleman by the name of Terry Bruner?
Yes.
How did you know Terry, Mr. Bruner?
We were in the same pod in Sedgwick County.
And when you say you were in the same pod at Sedgwick County, are you referring to Sedgwick County Jail?
Yes.
Now, do you recall the dates? Mr. Bruner, and the circumstances that we're talking about here are March of 2008. Were you there at that time?
Yes.
And were you in the same pod as Mr. Bruner?
Yes, pod 1.
Pod 1.
Yes.
All right. And how long had you been in... Were you in pod 1 before Mr. Bruner arrived?
Yes, I was.
The records in this case and the proofs all parties agree is that he arrived at the jail in 2006, March 6, 2008, and probably was put into the pod on March 7th, 2008. Were you in the pod
Yes.
at that time?
I was.
Okay. This is one of the exhibits in the case. What exhibit is this, Mr. Chalmers, do you recall?
It's first page of Exhibit 415.
Thank you. Exhibit 415, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Diagrams that were in the pod. Everybody agrees that Mr. Bruner was in 124. Where were you in the pod? Do you recall?
keys. Steering wheel.
This is his.
His cell.
Right.
I was over here, I believe, in 128.
I believe I was in 128.
So you would have been in one of the cells along, I'm not going to hold you to it, but you would have been one of the cells on the same side as him?
Yes.
Okay. How did you become aware of Mr. Bruner arriving at the jail?
When we come out for chow, we noticed new guys, and he was a new face in the pod.
And how did you see him, or do you recall the first time you saw him?
He came out for chow. He came out for lunch. That's how I remember him.
And what do you recall seeing?
When he came out, he looked like he was sick. It looked like he was detoxing. You know what I mean? He sat down at the chow table, gave his food away. You know, got back up, went back into his cell, and after that we got done eating.
Now the tables are right there outside. Are they right there outside the cell? Is
Yes,
that it?
They are.
Sort of like dormitory style?
Yeah.
Again, Mr. Chalmers put these in yesterday's pictures, but we've all agreed. This is cell 124.
Right.
Are these the tables where people eat?
Yes.
And you recall now looking at this where you are?
Yeah, I was further down.
Okay. And you saw him sitting at a table and he gave his food away and he looked sick?
He sat at this back table right here.
Okay. This table right here,
Yes.
closest to his cell.
Yes.
Why do you say he looked sick?
His hair was real scraggly, you know what I mean? He walked slow. He just didn't look well, unresponsive, you know what I mean? When a person doesn't want to eat, that usually means they're not feeling well, you know what I mean? Or they're not hungry.
Was he able to talk with you at all?
No.
When did you first observe him? I mean, he was there in that cell only from the 7th, and he was taken out on the 10th. So it'd be roughly 4 days. Did you see him every day that he was there?
No. He came out for chow, and then when he gave his tray away and went back in, after that, he stayed in his cell, you know, but all of us, we'd come out, watch TV and stuff, and every meal, we'd come out to eat, and he wouldn't show up. So all of us that were in the pod started talking to each other, like, you know, well, where's the new guy? How come the new guy ain't coming out to eat? You know what I'm saying? One of his partners was like, well, he's not really feeling too good, you know what I'm saying? He's kind of messed up. So they went on, you know what I mean, and he still wasn't coming out. He wasn't coming out to shower or nothing, you know. So a few of us went up to his cell window, checked in on him. He was laying in his bunk.
Could you walk up to his cell window like we're looking at and just look in?
Yes, you
like
can.
a picture window.
Right. And
Yeah.
checked in on him. He was laying in his bunk in the fetal position.
What do you mean in a fetal? I think I know what you mean, but I need you to tell the court and jury what you mean.
Curled up, you know what I mean, with his knees up to his chest, you know what I'm saying? And so not moving, you know what I'm saying? His cell was real trashy, you know what I'm saying? So we went to the officer, told the officer, you know, the guy in the cell, he's not looking too good, you know what I
You
mean?
told the pod officer?
Told the pod officer. And maybe they need to get the nurse down here to have him look at him. Guard was like, okay, well, you know, next shift, we'll take care of it on the next shift, you know what I'm saying? Next shift come around.
Go ahead.
And still nothing, you know what I mean? So
How long would that go on? Did you tell the shift officers on each shift he needed to have help and to get a nurse?
yes,
And what was the reaction?
it was pretty much like a blow off. You know, they always pushed it to the next shift, let the next shift deal with it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't really their main concern.
How long did that go on?
if I remember right, it took at least 2 days for them to actually get somebody into the pod to go up to his cell and look in his cell to see how he was doing.
Do you remember, did he ever come out to eat?
Just that one time.
Did you ever, before he was taken out of the cell, go and observe him in the cell?
Yes,
How many times?
once.
And when was that? Was that the day he was taken out or day before? Or
It was the day before.
Okay, assuming he was taken out on the 10th, you observed him in the cell in a fetal position?
Yes.
Okay. On the day he was taken out was the 10th. Do you recall that day?
Yeah. His partner checked on him. There was still no response from him. You know what I mean? They were knocking on the window. He wouldn't respond. You know what I'm saying? There was puke on the floor and stuff. So
What do you mean there was puke on the floor?
he actually, it looked like he tried to get to the toilet and couldn't quite make it and just threw up where he was at. You know what I'm saying? So we brought it to the guard's attention. You know, somebody needs to come in here and look at this dude because he's messed up. You know what I'm saying? Now he's laying on the floor. So the guard was like, okay. You know, so they called the nurse. Nurse comes in. They gets knocking on the window, calling his name. He's unresponsive. This is when they lock us down so they can go ahead and conduct their medical procedures or whatever it is that they were going to do. And then he was still unresponsive. So they realized they needed to take him to the clinic. They put him in the wheelchair and rolled him out.
Now, during that day before they did that, had you been notifying the guards on duty that day that he was sick and he needed help?
Yes.
Do you recall who the guards, that would have been, I think, the first shift starting at 7 o'clock, who those guards were?
One was a female officer. The other one was a black officer. Names, I don't remember their names. You know what I mean? But if I was to see them, I would recognize them.
Well, how about the two defendants here? This is the officer on the first shift of Mary Staton. I want you to assume that she wears her hair in a braid in the back when she's working. And this is the second officer, Mr. Jameson. Defendants.
Those are
Are
the
those
officers.
the officers?
Yes, they are.
And did you tell them during that first shift that he was sick?
Yes.
Is there any way they couldn't have known after you told them that he was sick and he needed help?
No.
Have an opportunity to object and ask the questions during this meeting.
I think based on his testimony so far, he's laid an appropriate opinion or foundation for expressing a lay opinion. Objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you told them he was sick during the day, I want you to assume that they didn't carry him out of there until about 3:45 in the afternoon.
All right.
What did they do beginning at 7 o'clock when you told him he was sick? What did he, strike that. Did he ever come out for food during that day?
Your Honor, making statements and trying to lead witnesses as to when this took place, I'd ask not do that. Just ask questions.
On the last day that you recall him being there, prior to them taking him out, do you recall him coming out for food that day?
No.
Do you recall him taking a shower that day?
No, he did not.
Do you recall him getting his linens ever changed?
No, he did not.
When you told these guards he needed help, what did they say to you?
It was pretty much like a blow off. You know, we'll get to it when we can. You know what I mean? If not, we'll let the next shift put it up to the next shift. Let the next shift be aware of what's going on.
How did you learn that he was laying on the floor?
By walking up to his cell and looking into the window.
Tell us what you saw.
Him laying on the floor, just laying there, like he was trying to get to the toilet. You know what I mean? To throw up into the toilet, and he just couldn't make it.
When you saw him lying there on the floor, what did you do?
We knocked on the window. You know what I mean? The one guy that actually knew him called his name. He was unresponsive.
Could you see vomit on the floor
Yes.
where he was laying?
Yes.
What else could you see on the floor?
The one of his partners had slid him a couple of soups because he was not eating. regular meals. They were unopened, just laying on the floor. You know what I mean? He had a bag of Cheez-Its that were unopened. You know, it looked like he had threw up in a bag also. And his cell was real nasty. It was real nasty.
When you saw him laying on the floor, how did you tell the guards? How did you do that? What do you do?
We go up to the guard window there because they're in a booth, so we have to communicate through them through a bing hole. And we told them, you know, well, the dude in the cell, he's laying on the floor now. You know what I mean? He doesn't look too well. Somebody needs to come and check on him. You know what I mean? That was it.
During the entire time that you had contact with Mr. Bruner, was it obvious to you that he was sick and needed help?
Yeah, you can see it. You could see it. There was definitely something wrong with him.
Did you see him eventually carried out of the cell?
Yeah, I seen them push him out into the in the wheelchair.
What did you see?
Him slumped over in the chair, kind of like he was in a sleep. You know what I mean? Just slumped over, unresponsive.
And what happened to his cell afterwards? Did you have any?
They locked it out after when they realized that they were going to keep him in the clinic. You know, they asked me to clean it out.
You cleaned it out?
I cleaned up his cell.
What did you see?
Like I said before, unopened food that was given to him, coffee that was not being drunk, that was unopened, his cheeses being open, the bag full of throw up. You know what I mean? His sheets and stuff were all soiled.
What do you mean they were soiled?
It looked like he had urinated in them. I mean, I'm not too sure, you know what I'm saying, but they were wet.
Do you know a gentleman by the name of Mr. Freshour? He was just here.
No, I do not.
Have you ever spoken with him?
No, I do not.
Do you know anything about him? You even know the name Brian Freshour?
No, I do not.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Tell us, what were his sheets?
Soiled. They were like wet, crumpled. You know what I mean? So I picked everything up.
Could you tell if they were soiled with urine or feces or sweat or all of that? I don't know.
You could see the wet stains on them. You know what I mean? As far as smells, they kind of smelled. It smelled like throw up for sure. You know what I mean? Because there was puke in the cell. And as far as the sheets, I can't really remember if they smelled like urine or not, but they were definitely wet. And so, I mean, it wasn't the water because the man hadn't been out of that bed, apparently, you know what I'm saying, to go get any type of water. So, yeah, his glasses were in there. He had some personal items in there. I bagged all that up, gave his personal items to the officer, and the linen was put in a bag and set out into the hallway.
What were the comments of the guards when you told them the man needed help and he was sick?
They was like, okay, you know, we'll get to it. You know what I'm saying? Or, you know, well, I'm kind of busy right now. I'll get to it when I do my rounds. Or when I come in here and do my rounds, I'll check in on him.
Anybody ever say anything derogatory about him?
No.
After he was wheeled out, did they provide you any protection for your body when you were cleaning out his cell?
Just gloves.
Your Honor, I'm not sure where this is.
I don't know what the relevance of that is either.
I just wonder.
That doesn't make it relevant just because you're curious.
Well, how long after he was out of the cell did they ask you to clean it up?
I'd say about an hour.
Who asked you to clean it up?
The officer that was on shift.
Okay. When's the next thing you learned about Mr. Bruner?
That he was in medical, and that was it. I went on to prison, and then eventually I seen him on the news and learned that he had passed away.
Did you ever have any further contact with these two defendants?
No.
Is there any question in your mind that the deputies who were on duty, assuming they were the two people you've identified, knew that he was sick?
Yeah, most definitely. You could look at him and tell there was definitely something wrong with him.
Did you tell them he needed help?
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Navarrete.
You're welcome.
Wait, one more thing.
Cross-examination.
Just one more question. The guards do rounds in that pod, don't they?
Yes.
Every hour, don't they? And they make a visual check of everybody in the cell every hour, don't they?
They do.
All the time that he was in that cell and the guards would walk around doing their check, they would have to look into his cell, wouldn't they?
Yes.
If you look into his cell and see, is the bunk visible where he's lying?
It is.
Can you you indicated some inmates knocked on the door trying to waken him.
Right.
Did he ever respond?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
You were shown part of Exhibit 415. I'll show you the other part. The pod has 2 floors, pod 1, right?
Yes, it does.
And you were shown the first floor. And is it your testimony to this jury that you were in the first floor,
Yes.
right by Terry Bruner's cell?
Not next to it, no. I believe I was in cell 122.
And I want to be clear because you were in pod 1 on the first floor at one point. But the fact is that then you were moved up to the second floor in pod 1. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you were in the second floor in pod 1 and had been moved there before Terry Bruner came to the pod. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right. So we don't want to be confusing anybody. You're somewhere up here
No.
on the second floor.
Yeah, I'm on the second floor, but not above his cell.
But you're somewhere up.
Right.
And your observations then and your contact with Terry Bruner would only be when you were down in the day room on the occasions when you're allowed to come out of the cell, right?
Yes.
Now, here's how that works, and I want to make sure this is clear. If you want to come out of the cell, you've got a speaker, and you can hit the speaker button, and you can ask the pod deputy to let you out of the cell, right?
Correct.
There are times where, during the day, the pod deputies will do ins and outs, and they'll say, okay, folks, who wants to come out and who wants to come in, right?
Not all officers do that.
Yeah. There are times where the whole pod is, quote, racked down. You know what that means, don't you?
Lockdown.
Yeah, and that means everybody has to go to their cell and be in their cell, right? So, for instance, when it's time to go to bed, everybody's racked down and they're in the cell, right?
Yes.
And when it's time for a head count, everybody is racked down, and the deputies will make their rounds and look into the cells, right?
Yes.
So when a deputy may be doing a head count, or when a deputy is making a round, you're, on the time that Mr. Bruner was there and you were there, you're up on one floor up in a locked cell, right?
Right.
You're not seeing what the deputy's doing or how the deputy's acting or how they conduct their rounds, are you?
You don't need to see. The pod is so small and so quiet during lockdown that you know exactly what the guard is doing at
Okay,
the time.
you know a guard is out,
Right.
And you need a guard, you know a guard is walking through the pod.
Correct.
But from your cell up on the second floor, you can't look down and see the guard, can you?
Yeah, you can.
Not when he's, well, mine's a bad question. You can't see through the floor, so if the deputy's standing right in front of the window of a cell looking in, can't see, right?
If you're above him, no. But if you're off to the side, yes, you can.
Well, you're off to the side, looking through your window.
Those are not the only cells that are above him, though.
If you're one of these cells over here, you might be able to see what's going over there. These cells over here, that's what you're saying, right?
Right. You can see, if you're on one side of the cell house, you can see up to a certain point to where the officer can go. And then after that, you don't see him no more. That is
Okay,
correct.
okay. And I just want to be clear. So there are times when you see officers, sometimes you can't, right?
Yes.
Now, you testified that, and I want to focus on the one day that you saw Mr. Bruner, because I understand that there's just one day that you saw him out of the cell, right? And that's the same day that you went up and looked into the cell window and saw him laying in this fetal position.
No, it's not.
Okay, so you're saying there's one day you saw him out of the cell, and then there's a later day that you saw him in the fetal position.
Correct.
The day that you saw him out of the cell is when he came out and was seated at one of the tables shown in what's shown
The
as
X that
Exhibit
is
30.
on the picture. That's
Yeah.
where he was seated at.
And that was the day that you remember he first came to the cell.
Yes.
And you're not saying on that day he had vomited, you're not saying on that day that he looked like he did on the day that you saw him in the fetal position. You're just saying he was walking slow, he was acting, he didn't want to eat, and he wouldn't talk to you, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you remember talking on that day to the guards?
Yes.
Okay.
Because later on that day, we did check on him.
All right. But you didn't talk to these folks on that day, did you?
The guards that were on shift that morning.
No, but you didn't talk to these folks that day, did you?
Yes. Those were the guards that were on shift.
These guards were on shift the first day?
No, not the first day.
All right. Try to be clear on the sequence here. The first day, when you saw Mr. Bruner, and he came out and walked to the table, would he sit down?
There's no need to talk to a guard then. He was walking.
Okay, you did not talk to the guard on that day.
Not at that particular time and moment, no.
All right, so the first time you talked to a guard was sometime, what?
Later on that day. After
Later.
the next meal came and he did not come out, his friend was concerned, went up to the cell, looked in there.
Okay.
And that's when we realized.
And
that he
that's
was-
when you went up to a guard on that first day and talked to somebody, but it was not either one of these people, right?
The guards that were on shift.
Okay, it was not these individuals.
I don't remember.
But you do remember talking to them on the 10th. How is it that you remember the 10th and don't remember a few
The
days
same
later?
guards don't work on the same days.
Exactly. So these would not have been the same guards.
I remember a female officer and a male black officer. That's what I remember.
And frankly, if counsel hadn't pointed to these folks and you met them on the street, you wouldn't recognize them either, would you?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Now, we get around to the next time that you had any contact with the guards, and you say that was on about Mr. Bruner, and that was on the 10th. Everybody agrees it was on the 10th that Mr. Bruner was ultimately taken to the clinic. And is it on the day that Mr. Bruner was actually wheeled out in the wheelchair? Is that the day when you talked to these two individuals?
Yes.
And when you talked to them, it was not in the morning, it was, in fact, in the afternoon, right?
We brought the attention to one guard on the morning shift. Then the next guard was on, I guess it was the second shift. That's when they wheeled him out of the cell, was on the second shift.
So your conversations were somebody on the second shift about getting them out? or on the first shift?
Both shifts.
Right. And I'm trying to get that in the sequence there. The first shift starts, what, roughly around 7 a.m. in the morning, right?
I guess so.
Well, do you know?
Excuse me?
Do you know?
What time they start?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Right. It starts, the new deputy comes in shortly after breakfast, right?
Okay.
Is that your memory?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you talked to a guard on the 10th for the first time, what time of day was it?
What time of the day it was?
Yeah.
It was in the morning.
Before breakfast?
Mid-morning, around probably right after lunch.
Okay, you're thinking that sometime just right after lunch is the first time that you talked to a guard.
Right.
Could it be that really it was later, maybe a couple hours later, that you first talked to a guard that day?
No.
The reason I ask is because court records show that on March 10 that you had a hearing for a criminal trial that was set to begin at 9:30, and that you were transported from the pod for that criminal hearing, leaving the pod at 8:29 a.m. And of course it was a 9 o'clock hearing. So your conversation would have had to been after you got back from court, right?
That's what I stated. It was mid-morning, 10, 11.
Okay. Now, when you got back from court, however, the records show that it was at 2:46. No, I'm sorry. I'm mistaken.
Judge, excuse me, what records is he reading into the record? I've never been given these.
Well, I don't know that that's a grounds for objection unless you want to approach and show that you were entitled to have them.
So I'm trying to get a sequence here, and I think maybe to get us back on base here. You were taken to the court, you remember that morning, you came back from court, and after you got back from court, it was when you first had any communication with these two individuals, right?
Yes.
And you remember it being the female guard that you talked to, right?
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember whether it was the female guard or whether it was the African American guard over here?
No, I don't.
And at that point, you communicate to them, look, he's not doing well, and they said, we'll get to it. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
And when you told him he's not doing well, was it because you had walked up and looked into the cell and saw the inmate laying on the ground?
Yes.
And that would have been sometime after lunch, what, around 2 o'clock?
If I can remember correctly.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Do you know Jay Ewells?
No.
You were in the Sedgwick County facility awaiting trial. That was for a robbery that you were ultimately convicted of, is that correct?
Correct.
And I don't want to know anything about your criminal history that's more than 10 years ago. But what felony convictions do you have other than this robbery convictions in the last 10 years?
Drugs.
Drugs. Do you remember a conviction in 2006 that would have been within the last 10 years, I guess, for conspiracy to commit a crime and larceny from a person?
Yeah.
And then there was also a burglary conviction down in Las Vegas back in July of 2004, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
You'd not talked to counsel who asked questions just a few minutes ago before today, I take it.
No.
And we've never met.
No.
But you have talked to investigators for the Bruner family, haven't you?
No.
This just came to you blindsided one day, you were in your cell, the next thing you're here. Is that your testimony?
Yes, it is.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Navarrete, just a couple more questions.
Okay.
Did Mr. Bruner look sick from the very first day that you saw him?
Yes.
Did he ever look like he was getting better?
No.
Did he look to you like he was getting worse?
Yes.
Was there any question in your mind that anybody on that pod, especially the people who were responsible for caring for him, could see and knew that he was sick?
Yes.
Is there a question in your mind or no question in your mind?
No question at all.
Why do you say that?
Because if it was handled appropriately, and like the other attorney was trying to point out, when the guards do rounds, head counts, whatever the case was, when you look into a cell and you see a person laying on the floor in the bunk and they don't look well, from my understanding, their procedure is to knock on the door, call out his name. That was never done. Like I said earlier, the cell, how the pod is quiet when we're locked down. You can hear a pin drop in there. You know what I mean? So if a guard is, Mr. Bruner, you're definitely going to hear it. And that was never done.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now, maybe I misunderstood your previous testimony. When the guards did their rounds, and you don't remember seeing the guards do that round that day 4 years ago, do you?
I know a guard did a round, though.
Yeah, well, you know it because it's happened in the past. You don't have a memory of it happening that day, do you?
But they do it at a specific time every day, no matter what time of the day.
They do it when they do head count, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, but you don't have a recollection of it, do you?
What, that they did a head count?
Yeah, you don't, do you have a mental image of that today?
Yeah.
And is it the same as the mental image that you have as seeing the inmate taken out with a wheelchair?
Yes.
Do you remember being in a professional visitation with your lawyer at and through 356 on that day?
No, I don't.
Now, if you were with your lawyer on 356 and he's wheeled out before that, then your memory might be flawed?
No, because I remember seeing him being wheeled out in a wheelchair.
I don't know.
One last question. Apparently, Mr. Chalmers has a record that says you were with your attorney at 357, and you have testified to the court and jury that you saw him wheeled out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I saw him wheeled out.
So it would have to have been after you met with your attorney, right?
Correct.
So if he has a record, for instance, that says he was wheeled out before 357 at like 327, if he has a record that says that, that wouldn't be true, would it?
That'd be correct.
Because you saw him wheeled out after you met your attorney. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
Okay, can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, you're excused.
Thank you.
Plaintiff's next witness.
Martinez. Oh, no, excuse me. Ms. Skelton.